The fog in Silicon Valley doesn't roll in like it does in the movies. It doesn't drift or dance, it sits on you. It is heavy, damp, and oppressive, smelling faintly of eucalyptus leaves and burnt venture capital. It was 6:45 a.m., that rare, magical window of time where the air is still crisp, and the only sound you can hear is the low, electric hum of the server farms vibrating in the basement of Building C, provided you listen hard enough. I love this time of day. It is the only time my campus feels like mine. It belongs to me for this brief, silent hour before the armada of white Teslas and Rivians invades, bringing with them a tidal wave of matcha lattes, Patagonia vests, and unearned confidence. Before we dive deeper into this story, let me know in the comments, what city or country are you watching this from? I always love seeing how far these stories travel. I was walking the perimeter of the main plaza, checking the landscaping, my boots crunching softly on the dew-covered pavement. My late husband, Robert, used to say that you could judge the health of a company by the state of its hydrangeas. If the irrigation is broken, Ava, he'd tell me, pointing a calloused finger at a wilting bloom, the cash flow is next. The plants are the first to know. I stopped by the main entrance of the flagship building, a glass monolith that reflected the gray morning sky. Currently, it housed Vertex AI, the flavor of the month startup that had leased the top 3 floors 6 months ago. That's when I saw it. It was a Bentley Continental GT. But not just any Bentley. It was wrapped in a matte black finish that seemed to suck the light out of the morning, sitting on custom rims that probably cost more than the down payment on my first house. It was a beautiful machine, I'll admit that, but its placement was a crime. It was parked diagonally across 2 spaces. And not just any 2 spaces. It was straddling the striped loading zone and my personal spot. The one with the faded, but clearly visible, white stencil that reads, Reserved, A. Mercer. I stood there, sipping my black coffee from a thermos that has seen more construction sites than a union foreman, just staring at the sheer audacity of it. The engine was still ticking, the metal contracting as it cooled down. It looked like a bruised beetle sitting on my asphalt. I felt that familiar prickle of irritation, the kind that starts at the base of your neck. I wasn't angry yet, I was just amazed. Suddenly, the automatic glass doors of the lobby swung open with a pneumatic hiss. Out walked a man who looked like he had been generated by an AI prompted with the words, arrogant tech director, 30s, Adderall addiction, God complex. He was wearing a puffer vest that was slightly too tight across the chest, designer loafers with absolutely no socks, and he was juggling 2 iPhones, thumbing away at one while holding the other to his ear. This was Devin. I knew him, though we had never formally met. He was the new director of operations for Vertex. I'd seen his picture on their website, usually captioned with a quote about disrupting paradigms or moving fast and breaking things. He didn't look at my face. Men like Devin never look at the face of a woman over 40 unless she is holding a checkbook or a subpoena. Instead, his eyes scanned down. He looked at my work boots, practical, heavy leather, steel-toed. He looked at my heavy canvas jacket, stained with a bit of oil from the gate hinge I'd fixed yesterday. He saw the heavy ring of master keys clipped to my belt loop, jingling softly. Hey you, he barked, not even breaking his stride. I turned slowly, screwing the cap back onto my thermos. I looked behind me, pretending to check if he was addressing someone else, though we were the only 2 people in the plaza. Excuse me, he snapped, closing the distance. Your facilities, right? Or valet. Whatever. He stopped 5 feet away from me, his eyes never leaving the screen of his phone as he scrolled through what looked like a Twitter feed. I'm late for a scrum. Park this and don't scratch the rims or I'll have your job. He didn't wait for an answer. He didn't ask if I could drive a high-performance vehicle. He just tossed the keys. It was an underhand toss, lazy and dismissive, the gesture of a king tossing a coin to a beggar. The heavy key fob arched through the morning mist, spinning in slow motion. Time seemed to dilate in that second. I watched the fob rising and falling, and I realized I had a choice. I could catch them. I have good reflexes. I could catch the keys, walk up to him, and explain who I was. I could explain that I own the asphalt he is standing on, the glass building behind him, the garden to his left, and technically the air he is currently polluting with his overpriced cologne. I could clarify that Mercer isn't the janitor. She's the landlord who holds the deed to the entire business park. But I didn't move my hands. I didn't flinch. I just took another sip of coffee and watched. The fob hit the pavement with a satisfying, sharp crack of expensive plastic meeting unforgiving concrete. It bounced once, skittered across the ground, and landed with a splash in a muddy puddle of condensation dripping from the hydrangea bushes. Devin stopped scrolling. The silence that followed was heavy. He looked down at the keys in the mud, then up at me, his face twisting into a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. It was the face of a toddler who had just been told no for the very first time in his life. His brain couldn't process the glitch in his reality. "Are you deaf?" he screamed, his voice cracking slightly. "Pick them up. That is a $200,000 machine." I took a slow, deliberate sip of my coffee, letting the steam warm my face. "It's parked in a towaway zone," I said. My voice was calm, flat, the voice of a woman who has buried a husband, raised 2 children, and negotiated commercial leases in a shark tank. "And you dropped your keys." "I tossed them to you. You're the help." He stepped closer, invading my personal space. He smelled of stale energy drinks and expensive moisturizer. He towered over me, trying to use his height to intimidate, but he clearly didn't know that I've stared down excavators. "Do you know who I am? I'm the director of operations here. I could buy and sell you before lunch." I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It wasn't the smile of a grandmother or a kindly old lady. It was the smile of a predator watching a gazelle with a limp. "I suggest you move the car, Devin," I said softly. "The tow trucks in this city are predatory. They don't care about your job title, and they certainly don't care about your rims." "Screw you," he spat. He bent down, snatching his keys out of the puddle. He looked at the mud on the fob, his face turning a deep shade of crimson, and wiped them aggressively on his beige pants, leaving a dark smear. "I'm leaving it there," he hissed, pointing a manicured finger in my face. "Touch it, and I sue. I'm going to call the management company and have you fired by noon." "What's your name? Karen? Brenda?" "Ava," I said. "Well, Ava, start updating your resume. You're done." He turned on his heel and stormed back into the building, leaving the Bentley straddling the lines, a black monument to his ego. I stood there for a moment, listening to the automatic doors slide shut behind him. My heart wasn't racing. My hands weren't shaking. In fact, a cold, crystalline clarity had settled over me. He thought I was the help. He thought I was a ghost in the machine of his success, someone to be ordered around and discarded. I pulled out my phone. I didn't call the tow truck. Not yet. That would be too easy. That would be a skirmish, and I was planning a war. I opened the Notes app and started a new file. I typed 2 words, Project Bentley. I walked to the service entrance, swiped my master key card, the one that grants access to every door, every server room, every mechanical shaft in the complex, and made my way up to my office. It's on the 4th floor, tucked away behind the mechanical rooms. It's modest, with no glass walls or beanbags, just a solid oak desk, a view of the entire plaza, and a safe containing the original deeds to the land. From my window, I looked down at the Bentley. It was a stain on my property, but it was also a gift. Devin had just handed me the one thing I needed to clean house, a reason. He thought he was the king of the castle because he rented the throne room. He forgot about the landlord who owned the stone. I sat down, opened my laptop, and pulled up the lease agreement for Vertex AI. It was a thick document, over 100 pages, negotiated 3 years ago by their former CFO, a man named Marcus. Marcus was decent, careful. He understood that a commercial lease wasn't a suggestion. It was a Bible. We had signed the paperwork over a bottle of Pinot in a conference room that smelled of lemon polish. He respected the building. He respected the history. But in Silicon Valley, companies age in dog years. 6 months ago, Vertex got a massive injection of Series B funding, $50 million. With that money came the bloat. Marcus was transitioned out for not being aggressive enough. The quiet engineer CEO was pushed to a figurehead role, and in walked the growth hackers. The Devins. The atmosphere of Building A had shifted overnight. The lobby, which I had designed with mid-century modern minimalism, teak wood, soft lighting, silence, was suddenly infested. Neon signs appeared on the walls that said things like "hustle harder" and "move fast" and "break things." They literally broke things. They broke the automatic blinds. They broke the coffee machine in the lobby twice. They scuffed the limestone floors with electric scooters because they insisted on riding indoors. I had tolerated it. I cashed the checks. The rent was exorbitant, and they paid on time. But money doesn't buy manners, and it certainly doesn't buy class. I scanned the pages of the lease until I found what I was looking for. Section 14C, Parking Easements and Asset Conduct. My eyes scanned the legalese, and a slow warmth spread through my chest. Oh, Devin. You didn't just park in my spot. You parked in a breach of contract. Around 10 a.m., a few hours after the key toss incident, I went down to the shared cafe on the ground floor. This is a space I heavily subsidize to keep the tenants happy. High-end espresso, local pastries, the works. I was standing in line behind a cluster of Vertex employees. They all looked the same: Patagonia vests, Allbirds shoes, and the frantic energy of people who are paid to panic. Devin was at the front of the line. I could hear him from 20 feet away. "What do you mean you're out of oat milk?" His voice wasn't just loud, it was performative. He wanted everyone in the cafe to know he was inconvenienced. He wanted an audience for his suffering. The barista was a sweet girl named Sarah, who was working her way through a master's in sociology. She looked terrified, clutching a carton of almond milk like a shield. "I'm sorry, sir. The delivery is late. We have almond, soy, macadamia, and regular." "I don't do almond," Devin sneered. "Almond is bad for the bees, Sarah. Do you hate bees?" He leaned over the counter, tapping his platinum credit card on the marble surface. Asterisk tap. 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 Asterisk. I pay a premium for this office space. That premium includes oat milk. It's in the SLA. I stood there blinking. It was definitely not in the service level agreement. I wrote the SLA. It covers HVAC uptime, security patrols, and elevator maintenance. It does not cover the specific nut juice preferences of mid-level management. "I can check the back again," Sarah stammered, her face flushing pink. "Don't check. Fix it," Devin snapped. "Send an intern to Whole Foods." "I don't care. Just get me my coffee, or I'm going to have a chat with the building management about the vendor quality here." I stepped forward, adjusting my heavy canvas jacket. To him, I still looked like a janitor. "The grocery store is 2 blocks away," I said, pitching my voice low and deferential, playing the part he had assigned me. "Maybe one of your team could run over?" Devin spun around. He didn't recognize me from the parking lot incident immediately. Or maybe I just barely registered as a human being to him. He squinted, looking at my work boots. "Oh, you again. The valet. Did you park my car?" "The car is where you left it," I said. He laughed, a sharp, barking sound. "Useless. Everyone in this building who isn't writing code is useless." He turned back to Sarah, waving a dismissive hand. "Cancel the order. I'm tweeting about this. This place is a dump." He stormed out, his entourage trailing behind him like pilot fish following a shark, tapping furiously on their phones as they went. A junior employee from Vertex, a young woman with tired eyes and a hoodie that looked 3 sizes too big, lingered at the counter. She looked at me, then at the door where Devin had vanished. "I'm so sorry," she whispered to Sarah, dropping a $5 bill into the tip jar. Then she looked at me. He's a lot. HR has a file on him the size of a dictionary, but he brings in the revenue." "So?" She shrugged, looking defeated. "That guy is a walking lawsuit waiting to happen." "Is that so?" I asked, keeping my tone casual, though my mind was racing. "Shame. The building is usually so quiet." "Yeah, well," she sighed, grabbing her black coffee. "Enjoy the quiet while you can. He's trying to get the board to approve a campus takeover. He wants to turn the courtyard into a pickleball court." She walked away, heading back to the elevators. I stood there frozen. The courtyard. My courtyard. The one with the Japanese maples my husband planted with his own hands 20 years ago. The one designed for meditation, for quiet reflection, for beauty. Pickleball. The rage that flared in my stomach wasn't hot like fire. It was cold, like liquid nitrogen. It burned, but it clarified everything. I looked at Sarah, who was wiping down the counter with trembling hands. "I'll have a black coffee, Sarah. Don't worry about him." "He's awful, Mrs. Mercer," Sarah whispered. "She knows who I am. She's one of the few who does. He treats everyone like dirt." "Dirt is patient, Sarah," I said, taking the cup she offered. "Dirt eventually covers everything." I took my coffee and walked back toward the elevators. I had felt amused curiosity before. Now I had a mission. Pickleball courts over my dead body. I needed to go back to the lease. I needed to see exactly how much rope Marcus had left in that contract. And I was going to use every inch of it to hang Devon's career. 2 days later, the war officially began. But it didn't start with a lawsuit. It started with the sound of jackhammers. The sound of jackhammers woke the campus at 7 a.m. sharp. It wasn't the distant, rhythmic thud of municipal roadwork. It was a jarring, bone-rattling drill that seemed to be coming from inside my own skull. I wasn't even in my office yet. I was out on the south lawn, inspecting the irrigation lines, enjoying the way the morning dew clung to the fescue grass. The noise shattered the peace instantly, echoing off the glass facades of the buildings like gunshots in a canyon. Construction requires permits. Construction requires city approval. But most importantly, construction requires me. I hadn't approved a light bulb change, let alone heavy machinery. I climbed into my golf cart. I know, it looks ridiculous. A woman in a heavy canvas jacket and steel-toe boots driving a cart meant for a leisurely 9 holes. But on a campus this size, it's about efficiency, not aesthetics. I floored the electric pedal, the tires kicking up wet gravel as I rounded the corner toward the guest parking lot. My stomach dropped. It wasn't just a minor repair. It was a massacre. 3 white vans marked Quick Charge Solutions were parked haphazardly on the manicured grass. A crew of 4 men in high-vis vests was tearing up the pristine asphalt of the guest lot, not the tenant lot, mind you, but the visitor lot, and trenching directly through a bed of ornamental grasses. I parked the cart and walked over, my boots crunching on the debris. The destruction was visceral. They had severed the root systems of 3 mature agapanthus bushes, plants that had been thriving there for a decade. Their thick, white roots lay exposed and bleeding sap onto the dirt. But that wasn't the worst part. They were drilling directly into a concrete retaining wall. I knew that wall. I knew what was inside it. It wasn't just rebar and concrete, it was the conduit for the main fiber optic trunk that serviced Building B. "Stop!" I yelled, waving my arms over the roar of the machinery. "Shut it down." "No." The foreman, a burly man covered in concrete dust, looked up. He saw a middle-aged woman with messy hair and a furious expression, and he hesitated. He signaled the guy on the jackhammer. The noise died down into a sputtering cough, leaving a ringing silence in the air. "Who are you?" the foreman asked, wiping sweat from his forehead. Before I could answer, a voice drifted over from the shade of a nearby oak tree. "What is the problem now?" I turned. Devon was standing there, holding an iPad and wearing a hard hat that looked like it had never seen a day of work in its life. It was pristine, white, and completely ridiculous paired with his skinny jeans and designer sneakers. "Oh my God," Devon groaned, rolling his eyes so hard I thought they might detach from his optic nerves. "You again? Are you stalking me? Do you not have toilets to scrub or something?" I ignored the insult. I pointed a trembling finger at the trench. "You cannot dig here, Devon. This is a guest lot. And that wall? That wall contains the fiber lines for the entire south wing. If you drill through that, you knock out the internet for the medical research firm next door." Devon scoffed, walking closer. He looked at the trench, then at me, with the dismissive air of a king addressing a peasant. "Relax, Grandma. I'm installing private EV chargers for the execs. We need dedicated superchargers. I don't care about the medical nerds next door. I care about charging my Taikung in 20 minutes. Did you get a permit?" I asked, my voice steady, though my blood was boiling. "Did you get landlord approval?" "I am the landlord, basically," he laughed, a sharp, barking sound. "Vertex pays 60% of the rent in this park. I own this place. Now get out of my way before I call security." I stepped closer, invading his personal space just enough to make him flinch. "I am security," I muttered. He sneered, turning his back on me to address the foreman. "Keep drilling. She's nobody. If she bothers you again, spray her with the hose." The foreman looked at me, then at Devin, and shrugged. He fired the jackhammer back up. I stepped back, shielding my face from the flying dust. I didn't scream. I didn't throw myself in front of the machine. I did something far more dangerous. I pulled out my phone. I took a photo of the trench. I took a photo of the severed agapanthus roots. I took a clear, high-resolution photo of the quick charge van license plates. Then I walked away. He wanted to play I Own the Place. Fine. We could play that game. That evening, there was a monthly tenant mixer in the main lobby. Usually, I skip these. It's a lot of cheap Chardonnay, stale crackers, and awkward business card swapping. But tonight, I went in my apartment on the top floor, showered off the day's grime, and put on a navy blazer over my work shirt. It was my version of formal wear. The lobby was unrecognizable. Vertex had taken over the event, naturally. They had brought in a DJ who was playing aggressive EDM at a volume that made the window panes rattle in their frames. The lighting, usually a warm, inviting amber, had been replaced with harsh purple and neon blue uplights. Devin was holding court in the center of the room, surrounded by a circle of young admirers who hung on his every word. He held a glass of champagne like it was a scepter. I drifted to the edge of the circle, nursing a sparkling water, blending into the background like I always did. "So I told the old hag," Devin shouted over the bass drop, recounting the morning's events with theatrical flair, "that if she wants to stop progress, she can go work at the library. We're taking over the whole lot soon anyway. I'm going to pave over that stupid garden in the back and put in a drone landing pad." The group laughed, a sycophantic, eager sound. "But what about the lease?" someone asked, a young woman who looked slightly concerned. "Doesn't the landlord have a say?" Devin scoffed, taking a swig of his drink. "The landlord is some shell company. Mercer Holdings. Probably some absentee boomer living in Florida playing shuffleboard. We don't care as long as the check clears. I haven't even read the lease. Why would I? We're Vertex. We do what we want. I haven't even read the lease." The words hung in the air, shimmering and beautiful. It was the admission I had been praying for. He didn't know about the easement clauses. He didn't know about the quiet enjoyment stipulations. And he certainly didn't know about Section 22, material alteration of premises and asset forfeiture. I smiled. It was the first genuine smile I'd had in days. I turned to leave, and Devin caught my eye. He winked, a mocking, arrogant wink. "Enjoying the free booze, janitor?" he mouthed across the room. I raised my water glass to him. Asterisk cheers, Devin. Drink up, asterisk. I went back to my office. It was 9 p.m. The bass from the party was still thumping below, vibrating the floorboards. I picked up the phone and dialed a number I knew by heart. "Lydia," I said when the line clicked open. "Lydia is my external compliance officer. She's a chain-smoking ex-building inspector who hates everyone, but she hates code violations the most. To her, a blocked fire exit isn't just a safety hazard, it's a personal insult." "Is it that tech company?" she rasped. Her voice sounded like gravel tumbling down a chute. "It is," I said. "Did they break something?" "They're drilling into the fiber easement to install unauthorized high-voltage chargers in a common area," I said calmly. There was silence on the other end. Then, the distinct sound of a lighter flicking, followed by a deep, rattling inhale. "I'll be there at 6 a.m., Lydia said. "Bring the blueprints. I'm going to bury these idiots in red tape." "Oh, Lydia," I said, watching the purple party lights pulse against the glass of the building next door. "It's not just red tape. We're building a dossier." Lydia arrived as promised, looking like a noir detective who had given up on solving murders to focus on zoning laws. She wore a trench coat despite the California sun and carried a clipboard that looked heavy enough to be a weapon. She didn't look at me. She walked straight to the trench in the guest lot. "Unshielded conduit," she mumbled, kicking a piece of plastic pipe with the toe of her boot. "Less than 18 inches of cover. No warning tape. This is a fire hazard, a trip hazard, and an insult to the National Electric Code." Document it, I said, holding the tape measure. For the next 3 days, we became invisible shadows. We didn't confront Devin. We didn't yell. We just watched, and we wrote. The dossier began to grow. It wasn't just the parking or the chargers. When you start looking closely at a company run by people who think rules are for legacy industries, you find rot everywhere. Violation 1. Unauthorized subletting. We tracked a strange humming noise to a supply closet on the 3rd floor. Inside, the temperature was a sweltering 90 degrees. We found a startup selling crypto mining heaters operating out of the closet. Devin was charging them rent in Bitcoin. The servers were plugged into a daisy chain of extension cords that was hot to the touch. That's a direct breach of the exclusivity clause and a fire waiting to happen. Violation 2. Fire code. They had blocked the emergency exit in the West Wing with a foosball table and a pallet of potting soil for their living wall project. Lydia actually cackled when she saw that. If there's a fire, she rasped, scribbling furiously, they'll die screaming over who gets to be the goalie. Violation 3. Noise pollution. The medical research firm next door, my best tenant, who pays 5 years in advance, filed a formal complaint. Apparently, Vertex's creative brainstorming sessions involved a subwoofer that was vibrating the delicate electron microscopes in their lab. They were threatening to break their lease. They think this is WeWork, Lydia said, snapping photos of a kegerator plugged into a surge protector that was daisy-chained to 3 other surge protectors. They think they're in a frat house. They don't realize you're the owner. Why haven't you told them? I looked at the photo of the kegerator. Because if I tell them, they'll just apologize and try to pay a fine. They'll try to charm me. I don't want an apology, Lydia. I want them out, or I want them broken. You're enjoying this, she accused, tapping her pen against the clipboard. I'm protecting my asset, I lied. I was enjoying it. I was enjoying the feeling of the trap snapping shut, inch by inch. The turning point of the investigation came on Thursday. I was in the lobby polishing the brass handrails. Yes, I do that sometimes. The rhythmic motion calms me, and it makes me invisible to people like Devin. I overheard him on the phone, pacing near the elevators. Yeah, the board is pushing back on the burn rate, he was saying, his voice tight. But I told them we have the facility locked down. I told them we own the lease on the parking structure. Yeah, I lied. Who cares? They're in New York. They're not going to fly out here to count parking spots. As long as the valuation holds until the IPO, I'm cashing out. I froze. My polishing cloth stopped moving. He wasn't just a bad tenant. He was defrauding his own investors. He was claiming assets he didn't have, specifically my parking structure, to pump up the company's valuation. I went back to my office and called my lawyer, an intense, sharp-suited man named Arthur. Arthur, I said, hypothetically, if a tenant claims ownership of common areas to secure funding, and those common areas are explicitly defined as landlord-controlled in the lease, is that just a breach, or is it fraud? Arthur chuckled darkly on the other end. Ava, that's piercing the corporate veil. That exposes the officers to personal liability. Why? Who's being stupid? Vertex, I said. The AI guys. I thought they were the next unicorn. They're a donkey in a party hat, Arthur deadpanned. Arthur, I need you to prep a notice of default. But don't send it yet. I need one more thing. What? I need him to do it again. I need him to claim the property in front of a witness I can use. You're scary when you're quiet, Ava. I'm not quiet, Arthur. I'm just muted. I hung up. The dossier was 2 inches thick. Photos, decibel readings, fire marshal reports, and now the hint of securities fraud. But I needed the kill shot. I needed him to disrespect the property in front of the money. And because the universe sometimes rewards the patient, I saw the schedule on the lobby monitor. Friday, 2 p.m. Vertex AI, International Investor Walkthrough. Perfect. Friday afternoon arrived with a brutal, bleaching sun. The heat radiated off the asphalt, making the air shimmer. A fleet of black SUVs pulled up to the main entrance. This wasn't the usual Uberlux crowd. This was serious money. SoftBank money. Sovereign wealth fund money. Men in suits that cost more than my car stepped out into the heat, looking skeptical and impatient. Devin was waiting for them. He had actually put on a jacket, though he paired it with sneakers. He was vibrating with manic energy, his smile plastered on like a sticker. "Welcome, gentlemen. Welcome to the Vertex campus," he announced, spreading his arms wide as if he had built the place himself with a trowel and mortar. I was nearby, trimming the hedges near the entrance. I wasn't hiding. I wanted to hear. "As you can see," Devin gestured to the main building, "we have fully integrated the facility into our workflow. We have plans to expand into the North Wing next quarter." He didn't have plans. He didn't even have an option to renew. One of the investors, a stern older man with silver hair and a thick German accent, pointed to the parking lot. Specifically, to the spot right in front. My spot. The Bentley was there again. Parked diagonally. Again. "Very impressive," the German said. "But parking is tight in the valley, ja? Do you have secured allocation?" "Oh, absolutely," Devin laughed, clapping the man on the back. "See that Bentley? That's my spot. We control this entire front lot. We have priority easement. The landlord basically reports to us." He saw me then. I was holding hedge clippers, standing 10 feet away. The German looked at me, then at Devin. "And the staff?" the investor asked. Devin sneered. "Part-time janitorial." "Hey you." He snapped his fingers at me. Snapped his fingers. "Get these leaves off the walkway. We're trying to have a meeting here. And, honestly, try to look a little more presentable when we have guests. You look like you slept in a dumpster." The investors chuckled nervously. It was an ugly moment, a power flex at the expense of the weak. I looked at Devin. I looked at the German investor. I looked at the Bentley sitting on my white lines. "I'll get right on that," I said. My voice was devoid of emotion. "Good. Chop chop," Devin said, turning his back on me to lead the group inside. "Now, if you'll follow me to the server room." They walked inside. The heavy glass doors clicked shut. I stood there for a long beat. The sun beat down on my neck. I felt the weight of the hedge clippers in my hand. Humiliation is a funny thing. If you let it sit, it rots you. But if you refine it, if you distill it, it becomes fuel. High-octane, clean-burning fuel. He had called me a janitor in front of his financiers. He had claimed my property as his own. And he had parked in my spot after being explicitly warned. I took out my phone. I didn't open the notes app this time. I opened my contacts. I scrolled past Arthur, lawyer, and Lydia, code. I tapped a number I hadn't used in 2 years. Not since a drunk driver abandoned a sedan in the loading dock. Frank's Towing and Recovery. A voice grunted on the other end. It sounded like gravel in a blender. "Frank, it's Ava Mercer." "Mrs. Mercer. Long time. What can I do for you?" "Need a jump?" "No, Frank. I have a vehicle on the property in violation of posted signage. Unauthorized use of a reserved space. Repeated infractions. Make, Bentley Continental GT, matte black." Frank whistled low. "Oof. That's a heavy beast. You want it moved to the street?" I looked at the building. I could see Devin in the lobby through the glass, gesturing wildly at a mural, playing the visionary. "No, Frank," I said, my voice cold. "I don't want it on the street. I want it impounded. I want you to take it to your lot in East San Jose. The one behind the junkyard." "That's a hell of a retrieval fee, Mrs. Mercer. The owner is going to be pissed." "The owner is currently busy lying to investors," I said. "Frank, can you be here in 10 minutes? For you?" "I'm already turning the key." I hung up. I clipped the phone back to my belt. I went back to trimming the hedges. I wanted the edges to be sharp. Razor sharp. Just like the clause I was about to enforce. Let's talk about lease agreement section 14, subsection D, paragraph 3. My late husband, Robert, was a kind man, a gentle soul who loved gardening and silence. But he was also a paranoid man when it came to business. He grew up poor, the kind of poor where you count slices of bread, and he believed that if you gave someone an inch, they would take a mile, then see you for the cost of the ruler. When we drafted the standard commercial lease for the campus back in the 90s, Robert insisted on what he called the clause. Legally, it's known as a lien on personal property for breach of easement. It states in very fine, very binding print, asterisk, in the event of repeated, documented violations of parking assignments, common area usage, or safety protocols, The landlord reserves the right to remove offending property at the tenant's expense. Furthermore, should said violations coincide with arrears or material breach of contract, landlord may hold said property as collateral against damages. Asterisk. I did the math in my head while I waited for Frank. Devin hadn't just parked in my spot. By installing those EV chargers without a permit, he had caused estimated damages of $40,000 to the electrical grid and the landscaping. By operating a crypto mine in a supply closet, he had spiked the unmetered utility usage. Technically, Vertex owed me close to $65,000 in damages and penalties. The Bentley was worth $200,000. It was perfect collateral. Frank arrived in 12 minutes flat. His truck was a monster, a flatbed Ford F-550 that looked like it had been through a war zone and won. It rumbled with a deep, tectonic bass that vibrated the fillings in your teeth. The chains on the back rattled like the ghosts of repossessed Civics. "That the beauty?" Frank asked, leaning out of the cab. He was chewing on a cigar that wasn't lit, his face a map of deep lines and indifference. "That's it," I said, pointing with my shears. "Key?" "No key," I replied. "Drag it." Frank grinned, a flash of gold tooth in the sunlight. Music to my ears. The process was violent and beautiful. Frank didn't play nice. He didn't use soft straps or wheel dollies. He backed the truck up with surgical precision, the reverse beeper cutting through the afternoon air like a countdown. He hooked the winch onto the Bentley's rear axle. Because the car was in park and the electronic parking brake was engaged, the rear tires locked up tight. The winch screamed as it took up the slack. The Bentley groaned, a low metallic protest, as it was dragged backward. The tires screeched against the asphalt, leaving thick black streaks as the $200,000 machine was hauled up onto the flatbed like a dead fish. It sounded like a dinosaur dying. Inside the glass lobby, heads began to turn. The soundproofing was good, but it wasn't that good. The screeching tires pierced the sterile bubble of the VC tour. I saw the investors stop mid-stride. I saw the German man point. And then I saw Devin. He ran to the glass wall, slapping it with his open palms. He looked like a mime trapped in a box of his own stupidity. His mouth was open in a scream I couldn't hear, his eyes wide with disbelief. He was watching his status symbol, his identity, being winched onto a truck that smelled of diesel and bad decisions. Frank secured the chains with a heavy, final clink. "Where to?" "The deep storage lot, Frank," I said, shouting over the engine. "The one with the guard dog that bites." "You got it, boss." Frank drove off, shifting gears with a grind that shook the pavement. The Bentley bobbed up and down on the flatbed, a defeated beast. I stood there for a moment, watching it disappear around the corner, then I went back to my office. I made a fresh pot of coffee, sat down in my leather chair, and waited. 3 minutes later, my office phone rang. It wasn't the direct line. It was the front desk extension. "Mrs. Mercer?" It was Chloe, Devin's assistant. Her voice was shaking so hard I could almost hear the vibration through the receiver. "Yes, Chloe. How can I help you?" "Devin he's screaming. He says his car was stolen. He says he's calling the police. He says you saw it happen." "I did see it happen, Chloe." Did you see who took it?" "I did." I took a slow sip of coffee. "Can you tell us?" "Tell Devin," I said, leaning back and looking at the ceiling, "that his vehicle has been secured pursuant to Section 14D of his lease agreement regarding collateral for damages to the property. Tell him it is parked in a secure location pending payment of outstanding liens regarding the unauthorized electrical work and landscape destruction." There was a long silence on the other end. You towed it?" "I repossessed it, Chloe." "There's a difference. Repossession implies I have a legal right to it, which I do." "Oh my God," she whispered. "He's going to kill me." "He won't kill anyone, Chloe. He's a bully, and bullies crumble when you take their toys. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a board meeting to prepare for." "Board meeting?" "You're not on the board." "Not your board, Chloe." "Not yet. But tell Devin to check his email. My lawyer just sent the notice of default." I hung up. The silence in my office was heavy, but it wasn't lonely. It was the silence of a chess player who just moved their queen into position and is waiting for the opponent to realize the game ended 3 turns ago. News travels fast in a building with glass walls. By 4 p.m., the story of the Bentley wasn't just hallway gossip, it was lore. I took the elevator down to the basement to check the water pressure gauges. 2 young engineers from a different startup were in the car with me. They didn't know who I was to them. I was just the woman in the canvas jacket who sometimes watered the plants. "Dude, did you hear about Vertex?" one whispered. "The car thing?" "Yeah, savage," the other replied. "I heard the landlord is actually some cartel front who towed a Bentley in the middle of a VC tour. Devin is losing his mind. I heard the German investors walked out. They thought it was a repo because the company was broke." I stared at the floor numbers changing, suppressing a smile. Cartel front, I liked that better than janitor. The ecosystem was turning. Devin's power came from the illusion of invincibility. He was the guy who broke rules and won. But when you break rules and lose, you're just a liability. When I got back to my desk, I opened the dossier. It was time for the next phase. The towing was a physical blow. Now I needed to deliver a structural one. I drafted an email. Not from me, but from the Concerned Tenants Association, an entity that legally consisted entirely of me and Lydia. I attached the photos of the fire hazards. I attached the decibel readings. I attached the log of the unauthorized crypto mining. And I sent it to the general inquiry inbox of Vertex's parent holding company, a massive conglomerate based in New York called Onyx Capital. Subject: Risk Assessment/Liability Exposure at Silicon Valley Campus. It was dry. It was boring. It was deadly. Corporate boards don't care about feelings. They don't care about rude directors. They care about liability. If a fire starts because of a blocked exit, they get sued. If the power grid blows because of a crypto mine, they get sued. Saturday passed quietly. Devin was reportedly working from home, probably because he didn't have a car to drive to the office. Monday morning, the phone rang. It wasn't Chloe. It was a 212 area code. New York. "Miss Mercer." A woman's voice. Crisp, efficient, terrifyingly calm. "This is Alina Vance, General Counsel for Onyx Capital." "Hello, Miss Vance. We received some disturbing documentation regarding our portfolio company, Vertex AI. We understand you own the property." "I do. We're seeing reports of lease violations, unpermitted construction, and a vehicle seizure." "The vehicle was collateral for damages," I said smoothly. "Standard procedure." "Right. Well, Miss Mercer, we are flying a team out on Wednesday. We are conducting an emergency audit of the Vertex leadership. We would like to invite you to sit in. We need to understand the extent of the liability." "I'd be happy to help," I said. "I can have the conference room prepped." "Thank you." "And Miss Mercer." "Yes. Is the building actually safe? Or should we bring hard hats?" "The building is safe, Miss Vance," I said. "The tenant is the hazard." "Understood. See you Wednesday." The trap was fully sprung. They weren't coming to defend Devin. They were coming to cut out the rot. And they were inviting the surgeon to the table. I spent Tuesday prepping. I didn't wear my work boots. I went to the back of my closet and pulled out the armor I hadn't worn since Robert died. A tailored Armani suit, charcoal gray. A silk blouse. Heels that clicked with the authority of a gavel. I walked the property one last time. The spot where the Bentley had been was empty. The oil stain was still there, but I'd scrubbed that out later. I saw Chloe outside smoking a cigarette. She looked exhausted, her eyes rimmed with red. She stared at me, mouth slightly open. She had never seen me in a suit. "Mrs. Mercer?" "Hello, Chloe. You look different." "I'm attending a meeting, Chloe." She looked at the building, then back at me. A dawn of realization crossed her face. "The board meeting? The one Devin is freaking out about." "That's the one." She took a drag of her cigarette, then dropped it and crushed it under her heel. "He's in there prepping slides about synergy. He thinks he can talk his way out of it." "He can't," I said. Chloe looked at me, and for the first time, she smiled. "Good luck, Mrs. Mercer. Give him hell." "I don't intend to give him anything, Chloe. I intend to take it all back." The conference room on the top floor of the Vertex building has a view of the Santa Cruz Mountains. It's a beautiful room. I know, because I chose the table, a 20-foot slab of reclaimed walnut. At 10 a.m., the room was full. 3 suits from Onyx Capital sat on one side. Alina Vance was there, looking like a shark in Prada. Devin sat at the head of the table. He looked like a man who had slept in a dryer. He was sweating. His tie was loose. His eyes were darting around the room. I walked in last. The click of my heels on the polished concrete floor was the only sound in the room. Devin looked up. Confusion washed over his face. He opened his mouth, likely to tell me to empty the trash or bring more water. Then he saw the suit. He saw the briefcase. He saw the way Alina Vance nodded to me with respect. "What is she doing here?" Devin asked, his voice thin and high. "This is a closed board meeting. Security." "Sit down, Devin," Alina said, not looking up from her iPad. "Miss Mercer is here at our request. She is the property owner and our largest secured creditor at the moment." Devin's jaw dropped. "Creditor?" "She's the facilities manager." "I own the building, Devin," I said, taking the seat directly opposite him. "And the land. And the parking lot." I placed my folder on the table. "Let's begin," Alina said. Devin tried. God, he tried. He launched into a slide deck about pivot points and disruptive scaling. He used words like ideation and paradigm shift. He waved his hands. He sweated. The board watched him with dead eyes. "Devin," Alina interrupted him mid-sentence. "Skip to the operations budget. We show a $60,000 variance in facilities costs and a legal notice regarding a lien." "That?" Devin pointed at me, his finger shaking. "That is harassment. This woman has a vendetta. She stole my car. She's trying to sabotage the company because I didn't tip her or something. It's insane. I'm filing a police report." Alina turned to me. "Miss Mercer." I stood up. I didn't plug in a laptop. I didn't use slides. I opened my folder and slid a single photo across the walnut table. It was the photo from the first violation, the time-stamped image of the Bentley parked in the reserved spot next to the quick charge van tearing up the guest lot. "This is a photo taken 3 weeks ago," I began, my voice steady. "It shows unauthorized construction that violated the city's easement on fiber optic lines. That construction risked shutting down the medical trials next door. The fines for that alone are $10,000 a day." I slid another document across. "This is the police report for the noise violation." And another. "This is the fire marshal citation for the blocked exits." And finally the lease. "And this," I tapped the document with a manicured nail, "is the lease agreement. Section 14. Devin claims he owns the parking lot. He does not. He claims he has approval for expansion. He does not. In fact, due to the material breach of contract caused by the structural damage to the parking lot, the lease is currently voidable at my discretion." I looked at Devin. He was shrinking. He looked smaller than he had ever looked. "I am not here for damages," I said to the board. "I don't need your money. I have plenty. I am here because this man is a liability to my asset. He treats this campus like a fraternity. He abuses staff. He lies to investors. And he parks." I paused for effect, in the wrong spot. "The car," Devin sputtered. "You stole my car." "I repossessed collateral," I corrected. "As is my right under the contract you signed but didn't read." Alina Vance looked at the documents. She looked at Devin. Then she closed her iPad with a definitive snap. "Thank you, Miss Mercer," Alina said. "That clarifies things." She turned to Devin. "Devin, effective immediately, you are placed on administrative leave pending a formal termination review. Please hand over your badge and your company devices." "You can't do this," Devin screamed, standing up and knocking his chair over. "I built this. I am Vertex." "You're a tenant," I said quietly. "And you're being evicted." "Security," Alina called out. My security guards, the ones I had texted 5 minutes ago, stepped into the room. They weren't smiling. "Please escort Mr. Banks out of the building." Devin looked around the room. No one made eye contact. He looked at me last. There was no arrogance left. Just fear. "My car," he whispered. "Where's my car?" "Talk to Frank," I said. The walk of shame is a long-standing corporate tradition, but I've never seen one quite like this. Devin was escorted out of the building he thought he owned, carrying a cardboard box that contained a fake succulent and a world's best boss mug that he had definitely bought for himself. He was flanked by two of my largest guards, guys who usually spend their day politely asking delivery drivers to move. Today, they looked like executioners. I walked out behind the board members. We stood on the steps of the plaza. The fog had burned off and the sun was shining. The air smelled of jasmine and justice. Devin stopped at the curb. He looked left. He looked right. He was looking for a ride, but he had no phone. Company property seized. He had no car. Impounded. Then, the sound of a heavy diesel engine rumbled around the corner. It was Frank. But he wasn't bringing the Bentley back. He was towing a Tesla Model X, one of the Vertex company cars that had been parked in the fire lane. The driver, Frank's cousin this time, slowed down as he passed the entrance. He saw me standing on the steps in my suit. He saw Devin holding his box. "Boss." The driver yelled out the window, looking at me. "We got the list. Which ones are we grabbing next?" I pointed at the line of Vertex company cars parked illegally along the red curb. "All of them," I said. "Start with the ones blocking the hydrant." Devin let out a sound that was half sob, half scream. That's the sales fleet." "Not anymore," I said. I walked down the steps, past the board members who were watching with a mix of horror and respect, and stopped in front of Devin. "You know," I said, my voice low, just for him. "If you had just picked up the keys, if you had just said sorry and moved the car, none of this would have happened." He looked at me with wet, red eyes. "You're a monster." "No, Devin," I said, checking my watch. "I'm a landlord. And you're trespassing." I turned to the security guard. "Remove him from the property." I watched them walk him to the edge of the campus, to the public sidewalk where the real world began. He looked small. He looked like just another guy in a vest who thought he was the main character, only to realize he was just an extra in someone else's movie. Alina Vance walked up beside me. She offered me a cigarette. I don't smoke, but I took it. I just held it unlit. "Ruthless," she said. "We could use someone like you in New York." "I prefer the weather here," I said. "And the parking is better." "We'll appoint an interim director tomorrow," she said. "Someone boring. Someone who reads leases." "That would be appreciated." She nodded and walked toward her waiting black SUV. I stayed on the steps. I looked at the spot where the Bentley had been. It was empty. The faded white stencil, *reserved A, Mercer *, was visible again, stark against the black asphalt. I walked over to my spot. I stood in the dead center of it. I pulled out my phone and opened the banking app. The notification had just come through. The penalty fees from Vertex had been wired by Onyx Capital to clear the lien. $65,000. I transferred it immediately to the Campus Beautification Fund. I was going to plant more hydrangeas. Maybe a few prickly pear cactuses right along the guest parking spots. You know, for texture. I looked at the empty spot. I took a deep breath of the eucalyptus air. My dignity hadn't left, it had just been parked in the garage for a while. And now? Now I was back in the driver's seat. I walked back inside. There was a scuff mark on the floor where Devin had dragged his feet. "Sarah," I called out to the girl at the coffee bar. "Yes, Mrs. Mercer," she beamed. "Get him up, please. And then, bring me an oat milk latte." "On the house." "We just got a delivery," she said. "Perfect," I smiled. "I'll take it in my office. I have a lot of paperwork to file and a new lease to draft. This one was going to have a very special clause about key tossing." End of thread. If you enjoyed watching a tech bro get deconstructed, you know what to do. But seriously, read your leases, people. And be nice to the janitor. She might just own the building. Places don't hand out justice memos, but somehow it always finds the right inbox. This story was proof that quiet moves beat loud egos every time. Thanks for listening. See you next time.